Dating apps, translated by J Nightmares. I downloaded a dating app. It was mainly because I was bored, to be honest, and I found the profile of someone that I went to high school with. I thought it must have been her, since she was still living in my hometown, and so was I. I checked out her screen name, her hobbies, but the moment that I saw her profile photo, there was no mistake. I decided to shoot her a message to see what she was up to. I always liked her, and our conversation went something like this, but I'll bleep some of her personal details here. "Hey, do you remember me? We went to high school together. How are you?" I got a reply almost instantly. "Oh, hey! Wow, it's been a while. I'm doing great. How about you?" "Yeah, when I saw your photo, I knew it was you. Wow, you haven't changed a bit. You are still as cute as you were in high school. What are you up to these days?" I'm still studying, working hard. I'm going college." "Hey, are you going to this university? Seems to be the right choice. It's pretty close." "Yeah, that's right." "Yeah, I always thought you'd go far. You always did well at school." Uh, Not really. The road near my house is under construction. It makes it so hard to study." "Oh, do you mean this street? I didn't know that was being worked on." Yeah, that's the one. I think they're building something nearby my house too. Probably in that vacant lot next to the convenience store." "Oh yeah? Right. Wow, you remember where I live really well, huh? What else?" Yeah. We used to play by your house all the time when we were kids, didn't we? Of course I remember. Remember that day that we skipped school and hung out in the park? The one right next to your house. And we ate ice cream all day. Oh, that was the best." The next reply that came back made my spine turn to ice. "Thanks. I know where she lives now." I guess, at this point, I wasn't speaking to the girl who I skipped school with all those years. I'm guessing that it was a person who wanted to find some information. Maybe a stalker? Did I just give a stalker her address? Dating Punishment, translated by J Nightmares. I am a 35-year-old man, and this is a really weird and mysterious thing that happened to me. A while ago, I downloaded a dating app even though I was married. I wanted to see if other women were interested in me, and I wanted to see if any of them would fall for me. I don't know. I guess that when I was young, I didn't really play around as much as I could have. Maybe I got married too soon, and I felt as if I needed to get something out of my system. It's not as if I didn't love my wife or I was dissatisfied with her. I didn't feel guilty because I wanted to be with my wife. One day, my wife had a really bad fever, so much so that I took her to the hospital. I was waiting in the waiting room, but since the hospital was a pretty big general one, I got bored quite quickly. I went to go and find a vending machine because I wanted something to drink. I found one on the corner of the second floor. I stood there flicking through my phone drinking a can of coffee, and I opened up the dating app I downloaded and sent a couple of messages. After a while, I got a response. The message was strange though, and all it said was, "Are you married?" I wrote back, "Well, I'm 35, what do you think?" And to be honest, The message annoyed me with how blunt it was. What? No greeting? No casual chit-chat? Well, it was my first reply and first step into the online dating world. Maybe this is what it's like, I guess. And I had a fish on the line, and I guess I didn't want to lose her. Yeah, I'm married. Is that going to be an issue? I replied. Honesty is the best policy, right? After a while, I got a reply. What's your wife's name? It read. What the hell? What a weird reply. Why do you want to know my wife's name? I responded. Tell me your wife's name, came the reply. I regretted mentioning that I was married at this point. I can't tell you without any reason. Why do you want to know so badly? I sent back, and I tried to keep calm about it. Tell me your wife's name, came the reply again. That was enough for me. I didn't want to keep talking to this person. It wasn't what I had in mind. But my phone buzzed. Tell me your wife's name. I decided to block them from messaging and calling me and head back to the waiting room as I didn't like it by the vending machine on the corner of the second floor anymore. I headed to the elevator, and when it arrived at my floor and the doors opened, I saw a woman inside. I was surprised as I started to walk in, assuming that the elevator would be empty. I nearly bumped into her, so I gave her a kind of apologetic head nod. She didn't react. She looked pretty boring. Tell me your wife's name, I heard her ask. I bolted out of the elevator terrified and ran down the stairs to the waiting room. My wife had finished her medical evaluation and greeted me with a pout. She scolded me for not being there for her. And I still don't understand what happened that day. How the hell was any of that possible? Did I just misunderstand what the woman said? Or was this some sort of karmic punishment for me attempting to play around? You know, was there some other force at work that day? All I know is that I have never played around with dating apps since, and I'm glad that I didn't go any further with them. If anyone is considering this, then please reconsider. If you love your partner, don't do them wrong. Mysterious Strangers, translated by J Nightmares. I met Amy back in the summer of 2001. I matched with her on Tinder. She had a simple profile. I found out that her husband passed away in a road accident, and she has 2 children, a boy in junior high school and a girl who goes to kindergarten. After talking for a couple of weeks, we decided to meet up one night for a drink. She said that her daughter was staying with her parents, so she had a rare free night. We spoke about so many different things, and the conversation really flowed well. I was enjoying myself a lot, and I was into her. Then her phone began to ring. It was her son. She said that he sounded really agitated and he was asking for her to come home as soon as possible. As soon as she finished explaining this to me, he called back again. She said that he was scared of something at home. We had plans for later that evening too, if you get my drift, so I was a little bummed out that our night was over. I thought it would have been pretty weird if I went back with her for her kid too, so I decided to stay at the bar and drink some more. She called me while I was still in the bar, and this is what happened to her son. He said that since he didn't have his mom or sister at home that night, He was enjoying eating what he wanted and playing some video games. After a few hours, he heard a huge thud at the front door. He said that he had locked the door after Amy, his mom, left for our date. He said that he even put the chain on. But when he came downstairs to check on what that huge noise was, the door was slightly open, yet the chain was still on. He thought that it was his mom who had come back early, and he stood there staring at the door. When he heard something hammer against it again, he involuntarily called out, "Mom?" But there was no response. He was really frightened at this point and didn't know what to do, and he peered through the gap in the door and then through the peephole, but he couldn't see anyone out there. He was so petrified by all of this that he called his mother. Since he was in junior high school and it was 2001, he didn't have a cell phone. Amy told me that the way their house was laid out, you couldn't see the door from where the corded home phone was. After he called her the first time, the door was being hit again and again. He hid behind the sofa as the door opened and slammed shut. He couldn't stand that awful noise. Just as he felt the tears welling in his eyes, the banging at the door ceased. Relieved that it was seemingly over, he got up from his hiding place to check on the damage, and then froze in place. The door was wide open. Someone was in the house with him. He was certain of it. He moved as swiftly and silently as he could to the kitchen, and he grabbed a kitchen knife, headed back to the lounge, and called his mom for the second time. Amy went home as fast as she could, and she said it took about 20 minutes to get back. When she got home, the door was shut. The door was unlocked, but when she pushed it open, she found that the chain was on. She was terrified for her son, so she called out to him through the gap in the door. When no response came, she called the home phone from her cell, and the lonely sound of the home phone ringing echoed through the house. She was hammering on the door and screaming his name, pushing with all her might to open it, but of course, it wouldn't budge. She was making so much noise that it alerted her neighbors, who gathered to watch the drama unfold. As he was explaining things, she heard her son call from the house. "Mom, is that really you?" Shortly after, he unlocked the door. After he called her for the second time, he ran to the bathroom and locked the door. He was sat in there shaking for fear of his life, and he said that someone tried to open the door, and when they couldn't, instead of knocking, they tapped it repeatedly. He was so frightened that even when he heard his mom banging on the door, he couldn't bring himself to leave the bathroom until he knew with 100% certainty that it was her. I heard all of this from Amy when I met up with her a second time. Apparently, this isn't the first time something like this has happened. Her daughter has never complained or experienced anything like it. It always happened when her son was home alone. However, this was the first time that he had been frightened. He was inconsolable that night, and he slept in her bed. She wondered if what occurred was something paranormal. Something might have attached itself to her son. I asked her not to rule out the possibility that he could have been doing this for attention, since she left to go on a date. But later, I reconsidered this, as something didn't seem quite right about it. When her son saw the door wide open after the second phone call, he didn't say that he shut it. So at any point from the moment he locked himself in the bathroom, someone could have gotten in. Someone might have been in the house. Someone might have been in there, until a point when things settled down and then left. But why though? It's something unexplainable for sure, so make sure your doors are locked. Real Life Tinder Horror Story by u/Lulu Bun. My friend told me this horrific story yesterday, and it has to be the scariest thing that I have ever heard, so I felt like sharing it to remind everyone to stay safe and cautious. This happened to a friend of our friend not too long ago. So, this girl matched with a guy on Tinder and went on a couple of dates with him. On the first 2 dates, they went for coffee and walks outside. She really liked him, thought he was friendly, good looking, and etc., and thought that they'd really clicked. For the 3rd date, the guy suggested that she should come over to his place to have some wine. She agreed because she felt safe and comfortable enough to do this at this point. So the time comes and she goes over to his place and he pours her a glass of wine. Things seem to go well. They joke around and enjoy a nice talk. But after a while, she starts feeling funny. Now, luckily, this girl had already been roofied once before, so she immediately recognized the effects once they kicked in. She was extremely clever in this situation and pretended that she was feeling fine. She told him as cheerfully and energetically as possible that she was going to use the toilet, as to seem like nothing was off. Once she was in the toilet, she locked the door and immediately called the police. She told them that she was drugged, locked in the toilet, and that they needed to come and get her out of there. And pretty soon after, she passes out. She awakes by the police but is still very drugged, so kind of slides in and out of consciousness. All she remembers is the police putting a bag over her head as they carry her out of there. She was saved. A few days later, she is asked to come down the police station to give her declaration of events. After doing this, she asked whether she remembers the police putting a bag over her head correctly, or if it was imagined due to the drugs or what was up with that. They tell her that they indeed put a bag over her head because they decided that it would have been too traumatizing for her to see as they carried her out of there, what he had prepared and set up for her in the living room. And this sent shivers down my spine. The guy ended up in jail, and to this day, she doesn't know what he had in mind for her. But it's clear that this was a very messed up, incredibly scary situation that could have ended horribly. So please, 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 always let someone know when you plan on going on a Tinder date, even if you feel safe, even if it's not your first date. Always ask a friend to call and check up on you during and after to let someone know you're safe. The duo I met on the dating app. Translated by J Nightmares. This happened one hot summer night a few years ago. I was out with my friend on a drive. For this story, we'll call him S. He turned to me as I was driving and asked me if I was up for meeting some women. He pulled out his phone and then started swiping through Tinder. I agreed since, it's always nice to meet women, and I had just bought a car, so I had it going for me. Plus, I had the app myself and it was in its height of popularity, so I jumped at the chance. You just leave matching the girls to me, man," I said. I was so full of confidence. I had a bit of a reputation back then with the ladies, and I'm not exactly proud of it these days. I started swiping and quickly reached my limit. All the while, my friend was giggling next to me. After about 20 minutes, I got a match, and as soon as I got the match, I got a message. It was amazing. The message was even better. It said, "Hi, what are you up to tonight? Want to spend some time with me and my friend? I think we could have a great night. What do you say?" That sent me and my friend into frenzy. We couldn't believe our luck. I asked my friend what he thought and he literally ripped the phone out of my hand to reply. So, two stupid men took the bait and courageously drove into the night to meet up with us complete strangers without knowing what hell awaited them. We sped to the agreed meeting point, but we couldn't see anyone there. Without sensing any danger, we pulled into a dark car park in the middle of nowhere, and we parked up. The meeting spot was a remote train station parking area. There was no one around. Red flags should have been going off, but they weren't. We were blinkered by lust, I suppose. I said to S, "This is pretty weird. They said they would be here waiting for us." We were so desperate to meet these women that we got out of the car and took a quick scan of the area searching for them. I said to S that I thought we had been tricked and that it was a hoax. Then, I heard someone shout, "Oi!" Me and S kept silent and started back to my car. "Hey, you, what are you looking for?" some guy shouted. Two men started power walking towards us. These guys didn't seem like law-abiding citizens at first glance, and before we knew it, they were approaching the car. I looked at us and we didn't need to say a word. We knew these were the guys who set the trap on Tinder for us. Why else were they told to meet at this remote location? We scrambled back into the car as they started jogging towards us. I saw the look in their eyes. They definitely had malicious intentions. I sped out of the parking area and they gave chase in their own car. It was terrifying. The thought of what might have happened to us if we were caught. Would we be robbed, beaten, or something worse? I broke some speed limits that night, but eventually, we lost them. I was surprised that they followed us for as long as they did. Maybe they wanted something we had. Maybe my new car? I didn't want to go anywhere close to where me and S lived, just in case those weird guys were still stalking us from an unseen distance. We just kept driving and agreed to make sure that we were about an hour away from our town. We stayed away from our homes until 4 a.m. that night, and then returned completely exhausted and nerve-wracked. And since that day, I avoided dating apps. To my Tinder date / neighbor / stalker, let's never meet again. By you / Emma Marie Snyder. I had just finished my freshman year in college at West Virginia University, and I had just moved out of my dorm room and same day moved into my first apartment that was on the first floor of a 3-floor apartment building. I, being recently cheated on, decided that I would hop back onto Tinder and see what was out there in a college town over the summer. I spent the night swiping away when I had gotten a match with this guy named Chad. Let's just call him that. I remember that I looked at his profile a little longer than the others, and mostly because he wasn't 100% my type from the first glance. But I was genuinely so bored with all of my friends home for the summer. So I put my phone down and didn't think much of it after seeing that we matched. The next day at around 5 p.m., I was just scrolling on Instagram when I remembered that I created that Tinder account. I decided to go back on the app, not thinking that I would have any messages. When I realized that I didn't have my notifications on, that's why I didn't see any notifications. But honestly, I just thought that I was ugly. Well, by my surprise, I had a few different messages, ranging from the typical corny pickup lines to the GIFs. I went through answering, not really putting much thought into my responses, normally just a lol or hey. And most of the connections just fizzled out like they do on apps like Tinder. It was only then that I noticed that one guy was replying almost instantly after I would answer. It was Chad. Chad was your typical Tinder profile. Selfie, very awkwardly angled, a dog, and of course, the shirtless picture. I was honestly just very bored, and he was kinda cute and just gave me something to do. I don't remember word for word of the conversation, and since this, I deleted my Tinder account and app and all together. But I do remember him being very nice. He offered to hang out and I declined at first, but he was very persistent. I was not in the mood to meet someone new, and he was just fun to talk to at that time. Then, he asked again to hang out and get food. And if you know me, you know that food is the way to my heart. So I agreed and said yes. I started to get ready to go and get food when he offered to just bring me food so we could hang out at my place instead of going out. I said sure because I genuinely didn't want to leave my house. I know. That was very dumb. Always meet in a public location. Chad picked me up a personal-sized pizza and didn't get anything for himself, which I found odd, so I didn't even eat any of it and just told him that I would eat it later because I wasn't as hungry as I thought I was. We watched half a movie and made brief conversations before it started, and I told him that I had just started my new job at Claire's at the local mall. Then I made an excuse to get him to leave, claiming that I was too tired and I had to work in the morning. I kind of just forgot about him and kept on messaging guys on Tinder when he hit me up a few days later, wanting to hang out again. But this time, I politely declined. He kept texting me and blowing up my phone altogether. And it had been about a month later, and I started dating my ex, Austin. He always found Chad super creepy and a threat to the relationship, so he had me block him on everything. So I did. My ex was very controlling. The only thing that I had forgotten to block him on was his physical phone number, since we had moved to communicating mostly on Snapchat. I got a very angry text a day after blocking him on Snapchat and Instagram. He was really upset that I blocked him, and he demanded answers. I explained that my boyfriend didn't want me talking to him anymore and requested that I block him. He became angry because I had not told him that I was seeing someone. Mind you, I hadn't seen him in almost a month, and I was only dating Austin for a week at this point. I said that I was sorry and that I wouldn't block his number in case he ever needed to get a hold of me for one reason or another. Austin and I was a very short-lived relationship where I ended up walking in on him in bed with the girl he always told me not to worry about. I texted Chad to vent about the whole situation, and that was what I thought was the end of us knowing each other since I hadn't heard from him the rest of that month. I went to Florida for my cousin's wedding, and when I came back, I came to find out by running into him that Chad had moved into the apartment right above mine and into the room directly above mine as well. I thought it was kinda strange, but I didn't think too much of it. I had started seeing this other guy that I met on Tinder named Zach not too long after returning from Florida. Zach and I were just starting to get to know each other when I started getting texts from Chad again asking to hang out and if he could cook me dinner this time. I just brushed them off, not thinking much of them, and politely declining and explaining that I had a boyfriend. He then proceeded to get upset again that I had not informed him of my new boyfriend. This is where I started to get very annoyed and told him that we are neighbors, and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. And he stopped replying. That's it, right? Weird Tinder guy moves into the room above yours, right? I wish. I started noticing some very weird things. When I would leave my room, I would always shut the door behind me because I didn't know my roommates too well, and at this point, it was just a habit. And as soon as I would shut my door, I would hear his door shut. That's the first thing that I noticed that I thought was strange. But then I realized that every time I would leave my apartment, he would be out on the balcony. I would shut the door to my room and I would hear his door shut. Then I would shut my front door and I would hear his balcony door shut. Every time I would walk to my car, I would try to not make eye contact and just pretend that I didn't know he was even there. But every time he said the same damn thing. Hey neighbor. This went on the whole time while I lived there. He slowly stopped doing it as much, but still here and there would do it. He always stared Zach every time he walked into my apartment with me. Then about halfway through my sophomore year of college, I finally realized that I was being stalked. These next few events that I am about to describe happened over a few months period of time, so it took a while to connect all of them. I started feeling like I was being watched for a while. I honestly just thought that I was being paranoid, but then there was one night that freaked me out like no other. I was sitting in my room. Remember, I lived on the first floor of the apartment building. When I started hearing whispering, and not talking, but whispering. I thought at first it was just one of the neighbors, but I quickly realized it was too soft of a voice to penetrate the walls of the apartment that I was living in. I started to freak out, and I turned off all of my lights to realize that there was a figure standing outside of my window, whispering to itself. I quickly shut the blinds and forced myself to go to sleep and then pretend that it didn't happen. I later found out that my roommates had seen the person standing outside of my window, but never told me because they didn't want to freak me out. I didn't think much after that because it never happened again. Or so I thought. I later found out from my roommates that they had seen someone outside of my window on multiple occasions, but never told me, and when we went out to my window, we realized that my window screen had been removed. The next event happened when I was working at Claire's. When I arrived to work, my assistant manager seemed very on edge, and I asked her what was going on, just thinking her and her boyfriend were having issues again. But she tells me that she has to wait to talk about it until there isn't anyone in the store. We assisted in helping customers for the next hour or so until the store finally had no customers. She then proceeds to tell me that there was a really weird call this morning from a guy acting very strange. This guy had called on the store phone to ask about our return policy, to which my assistant manager told him our policy was 30 days, except body jewelry. He said that he didn't have any body jewelry, so she told him that it should be totally fine to return it and just make sure to bring the receipt. He said okay and that he is on his way to the store right now. She said okay and see you soon. He then tells her that he wants to make sure he knows how to get there, which is important for later, and asked her to stay on the phone. She gave him directions, and once he got into the mall, because she was the only one in the store and had customers to take care of. He then asked what time we were closing tonight, and she told him that we closed at 9 p.m. She insisted that she had to get off the phone, and he asked her for just a few more seconds, 'cause he's almost there. She heard a tapping, and he asked her, "Do you hear that?" She said yes, and he said good. Well, he was pleasuring himself while on the phone with her, and she demanded that she had to get off the phone, to which he said, "You did such a good job, baby girl," and then hung up. Remember, the guy said that he was on his way to the store, so why would he need to know when we closed unless he wasn't actually on his way and just wanted to know what time that I would be leaving the store? Hearing that freaked me out because anyone who knows me knows that I close on Tuesdays and Thursdays by myself, including Chad. We notified security of the weird phone call and I went about my shift as normal, but just keeping an eye out on my surroundings. We didn't get another call for a few weeks, but when we did this time, I was actually in the store with my manager. It had just hit 9 p.m. and I was closing the gate to the store when my manager picked up the ringing phone, only to hear heavy breathing on the other end. I begged her to give me the phone because I would have been able to recognize the voice surely if it was Chad. She refused and just hung up instead of handing me the phone. I was very upset because at this point, I had felt like something was up involving me, but I didn't know what it was at this point yet. The next event is a small event, but shows his dedication to just me, and it happened in November. Zach and I had taken a break, and I decided, as always, to put myself back out there and see what was out there. And where would I do such a thing? Tinder. Of course, I stumbled onto his profile again and he had super liked me. At this point, I had not put two and two together, that he could have been the one who was stalking me and harassing me. So I swiped right to be nice, just for him to hit me with that same line, "Hey neighbor." The next event is the event that finally made me go to the cops after being stalked and harassed for almost a year at this point. I had gotten ready for a night out with one of my guy friends, Sean. Sean came over to my house before we went out to the clubs that night. I didn't want to drink, so I decided to drive us down. And as we were leaving my apartment, there he was, Chad. "Hey neighbor," Chad said as I was walking with Sean to my car. We get to the club and have a lot of fun to the point where I didn't even think about Chad. I take Sean home and then I go home. I woke up the next morning to a flat tire. Now, I live in West Virginia where the roads aren't the best, so I assumed that I hit a pothole. I put on my donut tire that you can only use for less than 100 miles, and I drove my car to the local car shop. The lady takes the keys to my car and pulls my car in and starts working on it. She then comes walking in, and I was thinking that was pretty quick, but she wasn't done. She came in to ask me a question. "Who the fuck did you piss off?" "Excuse me?" I ask her, surprised. She then repeats herself. "Who the fuck did you piss off?" I replied saying, "No one that I'm aware of. Why?" She then proceeds to tell me, "Somebody slashed their tire. They put one slash on one side of the tire and one slash on the other. Wherever you were, they were making sure you weren't going anywhere." As a quick reminder, my tires were slashed while I was asleep at my apartment complex, where the creepy Tinder guy Chad also lives above me, and saw me leave with a guy earlier in the night. After this, I went to the police and got a report on everything that had happened leading up to that moment. The police suggested that I move and then start fresh. My apartment complex wouldn't let me out of my lease, even when the police telling them that it's unsafe for me to live there anymore. I ultimately moved into another apartment building within the same apartment complex, but on the second floor this time. I switched cars with my brother and I quit my job. I looked like I dropped off the face of the earth. And then, the final event that happened to me was a text that confirmed my scariest thoughts. I got a text only a week after I moved from the one and only Chad. He was saying, "Since when aren't you my neighbor anymore?" Proving he was looking for me and he hasn't seen me in my car. I asked my old roommates if they said anything to him, and they all said that they didn't even know what he looked like. And that just further proved that he was watching me so intently to know that I had moved only after a week of not being there. I blocked his number after the last text and moved a third time within a year to avoid this guy. Nothing ever happened to him legally because there was no physical evidence. So, to my Tinder date, neighbor and stalker, let's never meet again. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.